I'm going to actually start the trio of previews here with Portland. And this trio, this Portland team has a long way to go. And we kind of knew that going into the offseason. This was a team that was 12-21 last season, 5-11 in the WCC. They do return 40% of the minutes from a year ago, which is obviously a little bit of a good sign continuity-wise. There's going to be some familiarity with the system, and there were a lot of new pieces last year coming in. But there are some very obvious things that need to be addressed. This was a team that allowed the second most points per game in the WCC. This was a team that was 8th in offensive rebounding. This was the second lowest scoring team in the league. So while they do have 7 returners, which is going to be good for that continuity front, they have 11 newcomers, 11 freshmen or redshirt freshmen who are going to see minutes this coming year. And I think this is where we have to. These are the things we have to see. It's like that those newcomers need to make an impact, but there's a specific way they have to make that impact. And Shantay Legans talked about it at Media Day, where he talked about the defensive intensity in practice, the ball movement on offense. They have size that can shoot it. Also, just like they needed to get younger so that they could be flexible in some of the roles that they want to have guys play. And there, again, a number of guys who are going to fit into that. Max McKinnon, one of the transfers coming over from Elon. Another Australian, as like we've seen Portland actually start to import quite a few Australians over the course of the last few years. McKinnon back-to-back gold medals at the U20s. He was the CAA Freshman of the Year a couple seasons ago. Last season, 12 points per game, 4.8 rebounds, 45% field goal shooter, 36% from 3. Good addition for this Pepperdine squad that's going to need some versatility in it. One of the freshmen I'm really excited to kind of see is going to be Austin Rapp. This 6'10" forward can shoot it. He has a good quick shot from the outside. Also coming over from Australia, won back-to-back NBL 1 national championships with the Knox Raiders. During that championship run, 17 points per game, 11 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 2 blocks. And I really liked his touch on the offensive side. I really liked how well he passed the ball out of the high post, but also from the perimeter. And he reminded me a little bit of a former St. Mary's player back in the day, one of the Aussies. He had a bit of the Daniel Kicker style of game, like very good 3-point shooter, can have his back to the basket, but I think he looks like he's going to be a better passer out of there, and should be exciting for Portland to have someone I think is going to be given a little bit more of a green light early on in his development. And what we see, again, 11 rebounds a game, those 2 blocks a game are things that Portland needs, are things that they needed to address, and at the very least on paper, we're starting to see those items be brought up. Another one of the guys who's going to kind of help that protection around the rim and that rebounding component is another freshman, Todd Jones, 6'9", quick, athletic around the rim, who runs the floor well in transition, good rebounder. It may take him a little bit of time. It did look like on tape that he needs to kind of work on his strength, build that up. As we know, the WCC is a big, big league, and strength is going to be a big component to surviving the gauntlet that the WCC is going to be, especially this year. Micah Balu, another freshman coming in, 6'5" guard. It doesn't appear the most athletic, but he can get to his spot. He's a willing passer, good passer. He has a lot of Tyler Robertson in his game. It doesn't necessarily look the best, but he gets the job done. He can find his spots. He can find his man running the court in the half court offense. This is someone I think that is going to actually fit well with Shantay Legans, based on like this is a Tyler Robertson type player, and we know that Shantay has done well with guys like that. And then another one, Jenna Dubol is another freshman coming in, 6'8", guard forward, really good range, NBA range from three, good athleticism. He can hit it off the dribbles, so it's nice to actually see he's not just a strictly spot up shooter. So that's a good thing to additionally to have. And again, we're getting some size on this Portland team, and one of the things that Portland struggled with was its lack of size. Like we talked a lot about the fact that they ended up with like 6'8", 6'9", 6'7" centers over the last couple of years because of injuries a lot of the times. But this was a smaller team that struggled to rebound, that struggled to defend the paint, and they're starting to bring in some size that should help to start to solve that problem. But then they also still do need to figure out what they're going to do on the offensive front, because again, talked about second lowest scoring team in the league. You need some shooters. Now, mentioned some of those guys, talked about Max McKinnon, Austin Rapp, whatnot. One of the guys who redshirted last year, who I think is going to help that, Vince Delano, 6'2" guard, redshirted last year, good off the ball scorer. I think this is going to be a really helpful component for this squad as they look to try to like balance out of like who's going to be your distributors and who's going to be guys who can cut to the basket, find easy buckets for the squad, because this is a team that's going to have to find creative ways to get some offense against not to say that the WCC has a ton of good defensive teams, but they have enough solid defensive teams that you are going to need to find creative ways to beat these squads. At least one of the guys who's coming back who's going to help them on the returning front, Vukashin Macic, of 12.5 points per game last year, 40% from three. So one of the few guys last year who was kind of that consistent offensive option for Portland. They did lose, obviously, a few of those other guys. Tyler Harris, Wanzi Gorcito, Tyler Robertson are all out the door. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity to see who is going to be stepping into a lot of these roles. Even though you do have a couple of returners, they're going to hopefully help that. One of the other returners, Bull Dengdit, who also has some Australian ties as well amongst a bunch of the other players, McKinnon, Rapp. This is someone who played 32 games a year ago, 6.4 points per game, 4.8 rebounds, 21 minutes a game. I think you'd expect to see him get a few more minutes for him as he continues to develop, as he continues to find his role with this squad. This is a Portland team that will be having an uphill climb throughout the course of the non-conference. Now, I think that there's some good opportunities in their non-conference schedule. I think once they're going to have some battles there, because by the time they get to conference play is going to be their toughest stretch of the season. Like, unlike some of the other WCC teams, Gonzaga, St. Mary's, San Francisco, Santa Clara, who have loaded up their non-conference, this is a team who has one or two good non-conference opportunities, but really the gauntlet is once they get into WCC play. They will be at Oregon on November 12th. They're at Long Beach State on the 16th. They're at Kent State, which obviously is another solid mid-major program. But then you really start to look down their schedule. They're going to open up WCC play with Washington State and Oregon State in a back-to-back. So one will be in Washington State in Portland, and then they'll head down to Corvallis to take on Oregon State. And then right after that, it's like they have Gonzaga, St. Mary's, USF. It's like the first 5 games are looking very similar to, like, liking it to what San Diego had to do last year in its first 5 games, which was very similar. Gonzaga twice, St. Mary's, Santa Clara, USF. They had to roll through them all right away. So it's important that Portland almost gets going early and gets its rhythm and gets some level of confidence before they get the WCC play, because that first 5 games to me just looks like it's going to be. It looks really rough to start off with those 5 out the gate, and with the two newbies, Washington State, Oregon State, coming in, who are I would say at that point are going to be playing pretty confidently. Gonzaga, same area as USF. We know what they're about. We know what they're doing. Now, San Francisco has been the odd one that Portland somehow has played pretty well over the last few years. So I'm not saying that USF is necessarily that's an automatic for them, but that's a team that by the time we get to January, especially it being in San Francisco and on the hilltop, that is just going to be a tough road game, tough kind of rounding out of that stretch for the Pilots. So as I think about totality of what this Portland team is going to look like, I think there's some opportunities that we start to see some young guys flourish, some young guys play well. I'm really looking forward to see Austin Rapp on that front. I think seeing some of the tape on Jinub Dubol was really interesting to me to see kind of what he's capable of doing. He's another guy that I'd like to really see more of what he's capable of doing. But the challenge for Portland is going to be, as they develop players, as they kind of find these diamonds in the rough, and they kind of did last year with Tyler Harris, is once you develop them, can you keep them around? Can you keep this rolling in the right direction? Portland has struggled the last few years. Portland is trying to get back to pointed in the right direction, get out of that bottom tier of the WCC. They've kind of been on that borderline of it the last 2 seasons. And I don't necessarily think that's going to change going into this year. I would pick them to finish 8th. I think that's right where they are, which is also where the coaches had them going into the season. I think the hill is a little too tough to climb with the 7 teams that are ahead of them in this race. I think a lot of the others have picked up solidified talent or have picked up tough enough talent, experienced enough talent that is going to lend them well. A lot of those teams are veteran teams, and Portland is going to be a far younger, much more inexperienced team than most of the others in the WCC. And that youth, that inexperience, while I think it's going to shine through at times in good ways, it's going to be one of the tougher things to deal with as they get deeper in conference play, as the veteran teams, the bigger teams, the stronger teams start to position themselves for the WCC tournament. So Portland, I think they're going to finish. I think the 8th spot is about right. I think really their window is like that 8, 9, 10. That's about, I think, where Portland's going to end up. But they're good enough to take care of Pepperdine, to take care of to do well against Pacific, to do well against San Diego. I think they have the potential to steal. They could steal one from maybe, say, LMU or even Oregon State. But this is going to be another building year for Portland, and it really is thinking about the growth of this year, but then also how you keep guys around for the following year and the following year.